I think that that's something that even as a child, I always had this innate sense of organizing, and I always kept everything tidy in a way. And it makes my family crazy, but it serves me really well. And I see that as one of my superpowers. And the other one I would have to say is resilience. I have been through a lot, and somehow I managed to keep getting up and keep going. And so I refer to myself actually as the resilient AF midlife mama. And that's most definitely one of my superpowers.
Great. Well, I want to dive a little deeper. We might do this with all three of you, but so I teach this 4 pillars of success, and these are the 4 like foundational pieces that I truly believe that success rests on. And one of those is organization. And it's the one that they'll go along with the first 3. And then we get to that and they're like, oh, like nobody wants to face that this is going to help them be successful. But I know that it's so incredibly important. So even going back to like, what are some things you can give advice on why is organization helpful to you? Why is that a superpower? And then what's a tip on ways for people? Like, what were some of those things that you did? I was weird too. I categorized all of my Halloween candy into piles and made charts and how many Snickers did I have? How many, and then would determine what I was going to trade my brother in candy. Do you know what I mean? It was like crazy. I'm crazy like that too. So I'd love you to share just a little bit on why is organization a good superpower to have? Like, what's it do for you?
So when I think about organization, it takes me back to what I was mentioning about executive functioning before, because it's one of our executive functions. And for me, it's how I see the world. And it's really that sense of everything has its place. Everything has a space that it can make sense, which helps in terms of like setting up systems or organizing a closet or a cabinet or a filing drawer, whatever it is. If there's a system in place and everything sort of has its space, it clarifies. And so for me, I've loved things like color coding and labeling and, like I'm one of those people, the closet is organized a little bit by color shades. And I'm not full on Marie Kondo, but it's definitely for me, there's a sense of peace to knowing where things are, being able to find them easily. Just that accessibility.
Great. That's great. I would just add to that, because I've been teaching this a long time. It's the lack of organization sucks the biggest time out of you than anything else. So the more organized you are and have that everything has a home, it's easier to put your hands on. It's easier to find. Even when your closet is organized like you described, which mine is too. I hate to say it, but it is too. I've got my whites. They lead into shades of pink, which lead into shades of blue. But I can go and find the blouse I'm looking for, and I can actually I have packed for a 3-week trip in 15 minutes. Like, when you know where to put your hands on something, that's going to actually get that time you want back. So we're all searching for time, and organization is the best way to grab that time, because when you're disorganized, it will actually eat more time away from you than almost anything else.
100%. I totally agree with you. And I think that what's interesting is it helps with how our brains function. So to be able to say, without even being in the space, like that, exactly where something is and you can describe it to somebody.
Yes.
That is a superpower.
Absolutely. Exactly. And visualize it. So let's move on to Meggan. So Meggan, what do you think your couple of superpowers are, skill sets?
Well, one of them is definitely forgiveness. And the reason that it's so important to me is because as an entrepreneur, and I mean, person in general, people hurt me. and so I have found that the most important thing I can do is just forgive, bless, and release and move on as quickly as possible so that I don't get stuck in this, weird vortex of just feeling sorry for myself and not being productive because I'm too emotional and that kind of thing. So that's one of them. And the second one I would say is taking action, because I take action really quickly. I have an idea and I'm already implementing it 5 minutes later. I don't spend a lot of time in overthinking. So I just do it and then I course correct and pivot as I need to. So those are probably my two superpowers.
And I will tell you that I ask this, week in and week out. We've done, 325 episodes, and I don't get the forgiveness one a lot. And yet I love that you said that, because that is what holds people up. It really, it's almost like holding you prisoner. Like you can't be able to still, I love bless, release, move on. And it allows you to navigate through things you need to do or just forget about. Even when you need to reach back out to that person, you still may want to have a conversation with that person. It's just best to forgive, move on. But people struggle with this. This is a big thing in people's personal lives that holds them up in really being the best version of themselves. And it holds them up in business as well. But I think there's also a piece of forgiveness of yourself. I think there's a ton of people out there that can't forgive themselves for mistakes they've made, or, trying something that costs their family too much. And they live in this space of this forever, that they don't want to try anything else new or different. So I see that sort of rear its ugly head with women too. Have you experienced that?
Yes, absolutely. And if I had been stuck in a place of unforgiveness against myself, I mean, I failed for 13 years. That's a whole lot of forgiveness having to happen there for me to actually have been able to get to a place where I am succeeding, where my husband is home full time with our kids and we're not worried about paying the bills anymore. And he's not having to go back to his backbreaking job because I can handle the finances now. But if I had not forgiven myself for all those years of failure, then there's no way that we would be at this place now. And forgiveness is so important to me that it's actually the first book I wrote, because I really needed people to understand how important it is, how much it will transform their lives when they do it, and also how much it has nothing to do with the other person and everything to do with us and our hearts. So when we forgive someone, we're just letting go of the anger. We're not saying that what they did was okay, because it probably wasn't, but
Right.
we're letting go. We're letting go of the anger and holding on to all of that unforgiveness and pent up emotions. We're letting that go, and then we're able to move on. So forgiveness for me is actually really a selfish thing because I don't want to be stuck in, just feeling angry and frustrated and bitter all the time. I just want to let that go and move on and be happy. And so for me, forgiveness was the key.
Exactly. And I always say that too. It's more what it does for you even than what it does for that other person, because I've had people say they don't deserve it. It's like, well, but I deserve to move on.
Yes.
I deserve to move on.
Exactly.
So great. So Lauren, let's go to you and talk about a couple of those superpowers.
Awesome. So I think for sure my primary superpower is curiosity.
I love that.
And just, I've always been a ferocious learner and student of everyone and everything. I think people in particular fascinate me. I could just watch and think and study. And being curious about other people, being curious about myself, being curious about the world, and kind of posturing myself, choosing to take on the posture of what's going on here rather than I don't like what's happening here. And choosing curiosity over judgment has served me very well with my relationship with myself, but also interpersonal relationships and people that I struggle to get along with too. And then I think another one of my superpowers is being able to see the world in systems, or I guess being able to connect dots in ways that I guess it seems that not other people can do, but it seems to be a way that I think is I zoom out of situations and get a very broad perspective, and then make connections and identify themes or blind spots in the different elements of a big picture. And so I think that those two things have helped me, I guess, understand the world, myself and other people, but also help the people around me to see things that maybe about a situation or about life that they were not able to see before because they were maybe standing too close.
I love that. I want to go back to curiosity here. And I just want to share something sort of funny, fun, however you want to look at it. So I've kind of like fallen in love with this word recently because I wasn't able to pinpoint why are even some young people, why do some succeed out of the gate, or they have a more rounded, even common sense, do you know what I mean? Or appreciation of things, or can get into conversations. Like my 16-year-old she can converse with anybody on almost anything. She really can in adult, and has been since she was very young. And so I've tried to pinpoint, what is it that makes people sort of be able to have those conversations and be able to network and to be able to continue to grow. And so the word that we really landed on is curiosity. Like, is a child curious? Do they want to learn more all the time about whatever? Are they curious, or are they like, I don't care about that? Because you'll see this in children where they're not curious. So I was talking last night. This is last night. I was on a training and I was doing it live on Facebook so people could comment. And I started talking about how being curious is so vitally important. And a couple of different people started making comments about Curious George was always getting into trouble. And then somebody else wrote on there, curiosity killed the cat. So it was like, it became very quick to me that people don't look at curiosity as a benefit, or like in your case, a superpower. And some people look at that as kind of being detrimental. That was like a big fat aha for me last night. I have to tell you, as a trainer, when these people are typing in these things about being curious isn't necessarily a good thing. Don't you find that odd?
I'm mortified. I'm going to say it took a long time for me to be able to recognize my unending quest to know more about stuff as a superpower. It actually took a Gallup StrengthsFinder 2.0 test. Like, it was not even on my radar. I just knew that I loved learning and I loved reading, and that if someone could pay me to get master's degrees and doctorates for my life, I would be a happy, like, that would be my dream life. And when I took that StrengthsFinder test, it showed up as my number 2. Wow. And it how they framed it was being I guess learning as a superpower, as a strength. And I was like, wait, doesn't everyone do this? Like, why would it even show up on like as a category, And yeah, I mean, I have been belittled for loving to learn as much as I do. People have labeled it as inconvenient to them, or frustrating to them, or weird, And so it makes sense that people would have these messages. I mean, like, if you just think, I mean, when I was a kid, getting good grades at school was like the stupidest thing you could do for yourself socially. So the message, I think, the implicit message is quite strong from early on. And I mean, it makes so much sense. When I, as an outsider